What's going on, everyone? I'm James with the School of Hard Knocks. I'm here with Jack and Josh, and today we're starting a brand new series called The Fight Card, where we're going to be going over entrepreneur and business stories from all over the world. Without further ado, let's get going. What are we about to talk about today?
Yeah, so the first thing I just wanted to bring up is this, I read about this concept called fatfire on Yahoo Finance, and basically it's, this wave of people in their 30s, whether they're, corporate or they work for a startup, and they accumulate a lot of assets, whether it be stock options if they work for a startup, or they have a super high salary working corporate, and basically they cut out any work-life balance and just save every single penny that they earn to invest so that they can retire in their 30s. And basically you're starting to see this massive wave of people in high salaried positions, especially in the tech field, because tech people, whether it's corporate or startup, they're making a lot of money. So basically the whole concept of this that I want to talk about is there room for a work-life balance in something like entrepreneurship? More so talking about the startup side, where basically you give up several years of your life of grinding just to be able to stack stock options, and when the company sells, if it sells, since startups are a huge risk, there's no room for work-life balance there if you want that successful startup. So what are y'all's thoughts on trying to be an entrepreneur and have work-life balance? Do those belong in the same sentence?
I think they definitely do. I think it ultimately depends on what entrepreneur you're trying to become, and kind of your aspirations and goals, where you want to be by certain points in your life. But I think it all comes down to, I do think that work-life balance, no matter whether you're working corporate or you're working as an entrepreneur, is important, because if you're just constantly chasing money, you're chasing retirement, it's you will potentially burn out at some point. I think it's important to grind very hard for a set amount of years, but during that time you also need to, we only live once, so, and chances are if you're in your 20s, early 30s, that is a pivotal, very important part of your life. You need to still take time to sit back and enjoy. Work priority, I understand that comes first, but you still need to take time to kind of enjoy. But that is the time to grind, so that way that you don't have to be in your 40s, 50s, 60s commuting to a place every day to go in and work.
Yeah, I think when you're starting off a company, their work-life balance and being an entrepreneur doesn't really go in the same sentence, really, because you have to give up so much, you have to sacrifice so much in order to try to become successful, because the truth is the company that you're trying to build is reliant on the CEO's direction and ultimately the work that they're putting into the company. Because if the CEO isn't working hard and he's taking the time off during the week, he's slacking off, then everything else under him is just gonna slowly but surely fall apart.
Yeah, I think I saw this one clip of Mark Cuban talking about a Shark Tank business that he invested in, where basically he lost all the money that he invested into the startup, and he said that, it wasn't really any business reasons why. He said he would text the startup founder that he invested in, and was just hey, how are things going? And the guy would kind of unload, just tell him a bunch of stuff, and then he'd look on the guy's Instagram, and he'd be in Bali, or he'd be at some party in California, and then you call the guy back up, and he'd be like, hey, what's going on? I gave you a bunch, I invested a ton of money. I'm your partner in this business. What's good? And the guy basically wrote it off as networking. But clearly, obviously, the company didn't work out. And, Mark Cuban obviously attributes to, there not being enough focus on the business itself, and not, so much partying going on.
Next thing was Bob Iger, I think was his name, former president of Disney, came out and said that, he thinks that movie going is on the trend downward, and that it's never going to be back to the point that it once was. And I don't think this really comes as a surprise to most people. I think that we've seen how the coronavirus pandemic has really has impacted a lot of industries in a negative way, whether that's going out to eat, whether that's going to the movies, just a lot of public places in general, where it used to be very normal to be packed and sold out shows and all that. It was very interesting because he had said that movie sales this year in 2022 from 2019 are down more than 30%. I think that they're on pace to close about 8 million or 7 billion in sales this year in box office sales, whereas they did 11 or 12 billion back in 2019. So again, not too much of a surprise. I think that even as everything's going on demand now, you're starting to see companies like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu signed all these major deals with various, whether it be directors, actors, and movie companies to get movies to premiere on their platforms, and where people can stream them way easier now as opposed to having to go see the movie in person, which is, to me, it's unfortunate because I used to love the idea of, going to see a good movie, get some good popcorn, a soda, and, really enjoy it. So what are your guys' kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely don't think movies are ever going to die. But one of the most interesting stats I saw in that article was the fact of, yes, the sales are down from, I think 7.5 to 11 from now to 2019, but it's also the amount of major film productions that have been released is down significantly. So there's been 46 major movie titles released this year, whereas at this time in 2019, there was about 75. So I'm curious as to what's going on in terms of Hollywood, of like, why aren't there as many movies being produced, and really just what's going on there.
Yeah, and I think that like the biggest thing with that is maybe a lot of the movie budgets that are coming out for a lot of these are really high, and so they're releasing less movies because they know like not as many people, if they're going to go to the movies, they're not going to go as frequently as they once did. Like the majority of the people might be like, it's been a while since I haven't seen a movie. Like I'm going to go and just like reminisce in the nostalgia of that experience, post-COVID. And so if you look at some of the budgets, I don't have the stats on me, but if you look at some of the budgets for a lot of the movies that are coming out, they're significantly higher than they ever have been in the past. And so I guess these production companies are probably investing a lot of money into making or trying to make the best movie possible just to put it out there. But I do like what you said about movies not ever going away, because I think, even you see clips of Quentin Tarantino coming, famous director, saying that there's something different how you embed in your brain the experience of getting up, dressing up, going to a movie, investing your money in the popcorn and the ticket, and sitting there for 2 hours and experiencing something with a bunch of strangers that you've never met before, but you share that experience, and it almost develops like a core memory.
Yeah.
Like remembering that you're more likely to remember going to the movies and watching that movie versus just, it's just another night at home and you flip on a movie at home pretty much.
Yeah, I agree. And there's I think we were having this discussion the other day. There's something about going to the movies that just feels right. It's just something fun to do. It's an awesome experience. And another thing that I thought was interesting about that article is that, yes, even though movie tickets sales are down, is that people are actually spending more while they're at the movie theater. So they're spending more on condiments, food, drinks. So it just makes you think that people, yes, the sales may be down, but people are really taking that experience more for granted now and willing to spend more and indulge more on that experience.
Yeah, 100%, since they're going a lot less. But I definitely want to talk about this one story. Pretty much a family-owned jewelry shop in Manhattan struggled to rebuild after 9/11. Obviously, yesterday was, I guess, the anniversary of 9/11. And basically, these two women, they're sisters. The business has been around for 46 years. What are your guys' thoughts about? They went through 9/11, of course, in they're probably their area. They went through, a bit of hardship with their business as a jewelry shop. Not as many people are, focused to go out in the street, where the tragedy happened. And then they went through the 2008 crash. They talked about that. But then what I thought was really interesting in the article, which is something we could talk about, is when they talked about the, COVID pandemic, they seemed like they were super prepared for it. Like they had some troubles where they had to lay some people off, but they said ultimately it didn't, from a mental standpoint, it hit them hard because there weren't as many customers in store. But they said they were super fast to act. They got iPads to all their people. They really went gung-ho on the e-commerce side and started doing it kind of an online experience. So 46 years in the business and going through, 9/11 in New York and then the 2008 crash and then the pandemic, what are your thoughts on the resiliency of just this, this amazing story of these two women that kept their family shop alive?
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest traits of a lot of successful entrepreneurs you hear about is just being adaptable and, like you said, being resilient to no matter what the circumstance, whether it's a crash in the market, whether it's a recession, whether it's a global pandemic, it's like you have to adapt. It's like they saw that what was happening with COVID, no one was going to buy jewelry in person. What they had to do, they had to go digital. They had to go the e-commerce route, which I think was a very effective, play and move on their part.
One of the most interesting things I thought from that story is that it seems like they've really learned how to pivot since that time. So back when 9/11 happened, they were taking advantage of some of the relief programs that were granted to them because, like you said, they were losing a ton of foot traffic just because of the towers collapsing and no one really wanted to go in that area anymore. So one of the things that they were paired up with was like a business technology advisor and pretty much helping them, get more digital. So one of the things that they built was a website. And, early in the 2000s, websites weren't all that popular. So I think that's the first edition of them seeing like, hey, we can adapt and like we can start to get customers from outside or just our local area and more customers from around the city as a whole, right? And now with the act of the COVID pandemic, them doing the iPads and focusing more on this like virtual experience where people don't have to go to the store anymore to see what options they have to offer, and instead we're like they can do the shopping online. I think it just shows that, hey, it doesn't matter what you're going through, as long as you find a way to pivot, you can always find a way to stay in business.
Thank you guys so much for watching the Fight Card. I'm Jack, James, and Josh with the School of Hard Knocks. Make sure that you leave a like on this video if you took something of value, and be sure to subscribe for more. We're going to be posting these Monday through Friday. And if you have a topic or suggestion that you want us to talk about on the show, go ahead and DM us at the School of Hard Knocks with a Z at the end on Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.